who is live from the Whiskey 61 Lounge in the Bank Plus studio.
Check it out.
The Out of Bounds Show, driven by the Ram trucks, Mac Hike in Flowood, MacHikeFlowood.com. Jeep Wranglers, Jeep Grand Cherokees, Ram trucks, and pre-owned and new SUVs and trucks, MacHikeFlowood.com. Hit it right now if you're in the market for a pre-owned or new SUV, the official truck of the Out of Bounds Show, the Ram trucks from Mac Hike and Flowood. We're live in the Bank Plus studio. The Out of Bounds Show is brought to you by Yuengling Lager, famous for its rich amber color and medium-bodied flavor, roasted caramel malt. It is our game day beer along with Dos Equis this fall. Enjoy a Yuengling Lager tonight as you watch the Bills and my Los Angeles Rams. We want to welcome in our friend Steve Palazzolo, Pro Football Focus, PFF.com. And Steve joins us on the Yuengling Lager guest line. So were you able to sleep last night with game day today? How'd that work?
Yeah, pretty exciting. I did because I just drove 16 hours back to Massachusetts for the week. So, yes, was very tired, but ready to go. I'm ready for the season. It's about time. All
right. So do you think Pat McAfee is as funny as we do?
Yeah, for the most part, I think so. Yeah, I think he's
a crazy man.
He's built an amazing brand for himself across all the various platforms, and I think he's just done a great job. The quote unquote new media, right? And just taking his opportunities, and he's been great with it.
All right, let's start with Dallas Cowboys and Dak Prescott. I'm struggling with this thing. This wide receiver unit, I asked you like 3 weeks ago or so, give or take. I said, what do you think? You said, they're 25th or worse. I'm going to ask you one more time as we go into opening weekend. They play Tampa Bay at home on Sunday night. Where would you rank this Dak's receiving unit right now?
Still 25th or worse. I mean, but it's coming from a spot where I think they've been top 3 over the last couple of years. Now, look, I kind of like you got to throw Dalton Schultz in there, and I think he's done some nice job, a nice job the last couple of years. He's developed. Jake Ferguson, the backup tight end now, the rookie, also looks decent. A guy that you might be able to make some plays for them. But I think what's made Dak's offense really effective these last couple of years when Dak's been the quarterback is having all those options. It's being able to spread the ball around, put defenses in a bind. I say this all the time. I think that's how you win in today's NFL. And they didn't get better at the receiver position or the playmaker position. They got worse in Dallas this year. So it is a question. I think they're probably one of the lesser units in the NFL right now. And I love CD Lamb, but there was a point a couple of years ago where, say, the Washington team had just Terry McLaurin and nothing else. And even the Titans one year had A.J. Brown and nothing else. And we had to rank them in the bottom 5 or 7 just because having one playmaker just isn't enough. So unless Jalen Tolbert really steps up or Michael Gallup gets back healthy, even when he does, it's still a big question mark for the Dallas Cowboys.
What are your thoughts on I know he's good, but what are your thoughts on CeeDee Lamb being slightly overrated, Steve?
I mean, I don't think he's overrated. I think he's a very good receiver. Again, I just come back to he can win in different ways. I think he can win in the slot. He can win outside. It's better for the team when you have someone else to run with him, which is, has been Amari Cooper. CeeDee Lamb, I don't think he's overrated. I think he could be one of the better receivers in the NFL. I think if you're playing fantasy or you're betting or whatever it might be, that CeeDee Lamb, you might be looking at a lot of yards this year just because the opportunity is going to be there and he's going to have to be the guy. So I think he's an excellent receiver. I think he's really good. But I always look at receiver as a position where you need 3 starters, and I feel better when you have 4 or 5 legitimate options because you move those guys around, you can do different things, you have the tight ends, and you're trying to exploit mismatches, and the fewer guys that you have, the more difficult that is to do on a weekly basis.
Steve Palazzolo on the Yuengling Lager guest line. Give me the top wide receiver unit in the league.
Oh, it's got to be the Bucks, I think. I think they're pretty loaded. The Raiders, I think, are interesting when you include Darren Waller in there. Devontae Adams being a top 2 or 3 receiver, and then Darren Waller being a top 2 or 3 tight end as far as difficult covers go. But I look at the Bucks and their depth, even losing Rob Gronkowski. I mean, part of it is what does Julio Jones have left, but he could really be the number 4 option. The Bucks might not have that full group right away with Chris Godwin coming back off injury, and Russell Gage has been backed up, and Julio, they're probably going to ease him in a little bit. But when those guys are all healthy, 4 legitimate receivers, solid enough tight ends, I think it's got to be the Bucks.
Okay, give me 2 and 3.
Oh man, I mean, I'll put the Raiders up there for sure.
Or 3 and 4. Sorry, 3 and 4.
Yeah, so the Raiders are there. The Bills, I think, would be up there. I'm trying to think if I'm missing anybody off the top of my head here. I think with the Bills, it's not as nice. They've with a couple losses the last couple of years. I liked having Cole Beasley there, but I think Stephon Diggs and what Gabriel Davis could do there puts them up there. And look, I had Dallas up there for a while, and they're not there anymore. Philadelphia is an interesting one though with AJ Brown. The teams that gained these number 1 wide receivers have to be up there. So Philly's probably up there, and then I'd probably have to go the Dolphins are right there in the mix as well because Tyreek Hill, I just think what he brings to the table is just so impactful, and with the other speed that they have, I'm blinded by speed, man. I love when you have speed players who can play. Jalen Waddle over there, Mike Gesicki, a tight end. I think the Dolphins probably have to be in the top 4. I named a bunch of teams, but
that's what I wanted.
I think all those teams are competing in there.
All right, Pro Football Focus, senior analyst Steve Palazzolo, PFF.com. It's game day, and we've got the Bills and the Rams. That's Cam Akers, 10 minutes from here. Cam Akers, Los Angeles Rams, tonight on the Tube. Tua, you just mentioned the Dolphins and Tyreek and so on. Are you expecting a good year from Tua or a really good year from Tua because of the weapons that you just went over?
I think at least a good year. I mean, this is going to be awesome for my theory that the wide receiver 1 has such a massive impact on the offense. It's really going to get tested this year with the 3 guys moving. I think Tua's stats are going to be better. I thought Tua coming out reminded me a lot of Jimmy Garoppolo in the fact that he generally works pretty quick and gets rid of the ball. He'll have some boneheaded plays in there, just like Jimmy G does. And Garoppolo was the guy that was running this offense basically the last few years in San Francisco. And Garoppolo was second in the league in yards per attempt last year, which is a pretty good metric for efficiency. And he did it without throwing the ball down the field a whole lot. I think Tua, combined with what Mike Daniel has, could do that, right? I mean, we could be looking at ridiculously good stats for Tua without him necessarily getting that much better at playing quarterback just because of Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Mike Gesicki, Cedric Wilson coming over from the Cowboys, another guy that Dak could use this year. So that's my thought is Tua's going to get a little bit better. The stats might get a lot better. And the Dolphins' offense is going to look pretty explosive as long as all those guys stay healthy.
Everybody's talking about the Buffalo Bills, and no doubt they're good and talented, and McDermott and all this kind of, and obviously Josh Allen. But so when you look at the AFC, East, what do you think that Miami can be within striking distance in December?
I mean, look, they've got a lot that has to break their way. I think the Bills are the pretty clear front runner. I don't think the Patriots will be as good as last year, but it would be silly to write off Bill Belichick and think, hey, he could keep them close. But I think it's the Bills. I mean, if we're talking striking distance, the Patriots were in striking distance last year. There was a December game in Foxborough to decide the division. And the best team won. The Bills won, and they pulled away at the end. But if we're talking striking distance, I wouldn't be surprised if the Patriots or the Dolphins were at least close in December. But I think ultimately, the Bills are the better rounded team, and they're certainly continuing to build on what they've started there with behind Josh Allen at quarterback.
Are you as high on the Bills as everybody else coming out of the AFC, or do you have another team? I mean, I'm watching the NFL Network, and 12 of 12 people pick the Bills, which I think is absurd and never happened in the history of media picking. Where are you as far as the front runner in the AFC, or do you have it to where it's like 3 or 4 teams and there's not a whisker's worth of difference?
Oh, I mean, if I had to pick today, I would pick the Bills, right? I think I would take the Bills. But if you told me any of 8 teams were going to represent the AFC in the Super Bowl, I wouldn't be surprised. And I think that's what's going to make this season so special. I give the Bills the edge, but they're not without flaw. I think it's because what happens in the offseason is you remember, hey, they were 13 seconds away from going to the AFC Championship and hosting it, and they added Von Miller, and you just look at those things and think, oh, they must be better. And the other teams maybe didn't have the offseason excitement. It feels like the Chiefs took a step back losing Tyreek Hill. It just doesn't feel great for the other teams that are competing with them. But look, the Ravens are still going to be dangerous because they're going to be healthy. The Bengals are going to be dangerous again. The Chargers are going to be dangerous with all of their additions and Justin Herbert heading into year 3. Who knows what Russell Wilson's going to bring to the Denver Broncos if they're going to be in this Super Bowl competition or merely just a good team. I mean, the entire AFC is just so loaded that it's tough to say, oh yeah, absolutely, the Bills are going to come out of it. It's the playoffs are going to be crazy.
I love it
because I feel like every game's going to be great once again. So I would lean Bills if I had to choose. Yeah, but the AFC is going to be just incredibly competitive. They're going to beat each other up every week, and there are going to be some good teams, some very good teams at the end of the year that have 8 wins, 9 wins, and aren't making the playoffs.
Ooh. Steve Palazzolo on the Yuengling Lager guest line. So all things being equal, like let's say they had the same amount of talent and front office talent and head coach talent, who would you take? Joe Burrow or Josh Allen?
Oh man, that's a great question. I think the old me, I think I would take Josh Allen. I mean, the old me might lean toward Joe Burrow and his consistency. But there's a part of me that says if the goal, it honestly depends on what the goal is. And this sounds ridiculous, but if the goal is to win a Super Bowl, then I would go Josh Allen. Not because he's that much better than Joe Burrow. I just think the high end of Josh Allen, which we saw in the playoffs last year, is just out of this world. If the goal is to be good every single year and be more consistent, I think it's Burrow. It is this idea, like some teams are content with just making the playoffs every year and winning 9 or 10 games. But Josh Allen gives me that high end of variance, as we call it, that high end that is so spectacular that dude's going to go on a run and lead the Bills to a playoff game, and that's where I would probably lean Josh Allen at this point in my career, at this point in his career. And that's a guy I doubted, coming out of Wyoming. He has improved his weaknesses. I think he's become a lot more consistent, but again, when he gets going, when Josh Allen gets going, that game in New England last year that I was referencing, he took over. He took over as a runner, as a passer. We saw it in the playoffs against New England. We saw it in the playoffs against the Chiefs. So give me Josh Allen because of what that high end really brings.
Can Trey Lance with the 49ers, can he be Josh Allen or Josh Allen light?
I think it's tough to put anybody in Josh Allen's camp right now.
Fair enough.
We really haven't seen that level of development. But here's what I'll say. That stat I told you about Jimmy Garoppolo earlier, he's throwing the ball shorter than anyone in the NFL, basically, and having the best yards per attempt production-wise. That is a product of Kyle Shanahan and the playmakers, Deebo Samuel creating after the catch, George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk. Trey Lance is now being placed into that system, and he has this ability to flip the field with those 40 and 50-yard passes that Jimmy Garoppolo was not bringing to the table. Then you throw in Trey Lance's rushing ability and the fact that the Shanahan family, like they sit around the Thanksgiving dinner table trying to figure out how do we make defenses, really struggle to defend our run game. What do we do? How do we make life difficult for defenses Trey Lance adds that element that that Shanahan hasn't had, that Kyle Shanahan hasn't had since RG3. So now you're saying from a run game perspective, they've got new wrinkles. From a pass game perspective, they have a whole area of the field opened up. Trey Lance doesn't have to be great to still create incredible offense, I think, for the San Francisco 49ers. And that seems to be the trend with what I'm saying here all day today is the situation around the quarterback is so crucial. And I think Trey Lance is in a fantastic situation where they're gonna create offense again, because that's what they do under Kyle Shanahan. And the Niners are going to be dangerous as long as Trey Lance isn't a disaster, as long as his accuracy isn't so bad or his decision-making isn't so bad that he's turning it over and missing all these open throws.
Whereas all the pressure is on Dak to be the playmaker in Dallas because of the offensive system and who's around him. It's not that way with a Trey Lance because of Shanahan's brilliance and his offensive system and some of the weapons that they have. Yes or no?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Kellen Moore is as bad as you guys think he is, but yeah, I would say the best offenses in the NFL. It's a quarterback-driven league, right? We hear that all the time, and it is true. The quarterback is the biggest driver, but when you take a good to great quarterback and then add good to great playmakers, that's where you have Patrick Mahomes breaking the league. That's where you have you put Tom Brady with some of the best receivers, and it's going to improve his production as well. When you have Aaron Rodgers plus Devontae Adams, you're going to have, unstoppable third down combination or unstoppable red zone combination. So yeah, those combinations are what win in the NFL. And I would say that the Cowboys, I think they had that for a few years and they've lost it this year, unless the Jalen Tolberts of the world really step up and prove to be even better than we thought coming out.
What are your top 3 or 4? You mentioned Shanahan. You've referenced some others. Who are your top 3 or 4 offensive systems in the NFL right now today?
Oh, man. So the interesting thing about that is I think play calling is a lot like quarterbacks right now, where there might just be a few good ones, and then the rest are kind of, clustered in the middle. So, yeah, Shanahan's certainly up there. I think Sean Payton was up there before so he doesn't count. He was up there before he left. Josh McDaniels is probably up there, but again, it's he still had a season where Cam Newton couldn't do a whole lot with that offense. But Josh McDaniels, I think, has this history of doing a pretty good job of adjusting to his personnel. Believe it or not, Kellen Moore, I think, has been decent. Probably not top 3 or 4 though. It's tough to separate Kyle Shanahan now from Mike McDaniel, who's in Miami. So Mike McDaniel kind of gets to start his own ranking, even though he was technically offensive coordinator there, and he could be. That whole scheme has done a really good job there. It's tough and I'm trying to separate Brian Daboll and what he did in Buffalo with Josh Allen and separate it from Josh Allen's development. How much was Daboll? How much was Josh Allen? We'll learn a little bit more this year. I have a feeling that it was Allen's development. And then you have to put anything that Andy Reid touches has turned to gold as far as quarterbacks go. He has always elevated quarterbacks. He's always created offense. And then you add the special talent that is Patrick Mahomes, and that's where you get the league-breaking type of stuff. So Andy Reid and whoever's truly calling the plays over there, you have to put them in that bucket as well.
All right, let's switch gears. Steve Palazzolo, NFL Insider, Pro Football Focus, PFF.com. He joins us on the Yuengling Lager guest line. The Saints' life without Sean Payton, who I kind of like where you were going. I think he's a top 3 or 4 coach on the planet when he's active. Now with life after Sean, but they still have a talented roster, but it's a veteran-laden old roster too. They're a 5.5-point dog this weekend, which a lot of people say is I don't know if it's moved overnight, but is way too much against Atlanta in Atlanta. What are your expectations for the Saints now that Dennis Allen has taken over and this will be Jameis Winston's second year leading the way?
I feel like the expectations for the Saints have just gotten higher and higher as we've gotten closer to the season. Every year you get to the offseason and it's like, wow, they're $3 billion over the cap. How are they going to figure it out? And then they figure it out, and it's like, okay, yeah, the roster does look pretty good. They have taken a step back on the offensive line. Trevor Penning, the rookie, is hurt, and you don't have Teron Armstead up there, so there's some questions there. But I love the way the playmaker situation has turned out, adding Jarvis Landry, drafting Chris Olave, Michael Thomas coming back. I think the high end for the Saints could be special. It comes down to Jameis Winston and his consistency. He has been consistently inconsistent throughout his career. That's what makes Jameis so special. He does have that high end of variance. Like I said, the special stuff can be there. With Jameis, it's about cutting down the turnovers. He only played a handful of games last year. I don't think we learned enough about what Jameis is going to do in this system. And we still don't really know what that looks like without Sean Payton. But I'll just say this. The Saints are going to they have a chance to have one of the better defenses in the NFL because their secondary is really good, starting with Marshawn Lattimore, adding Tyrann Mathieu in there, Marcus May when he's in there and healthy. So they have a very good secondary. They can get after the quarterback with their long pass rushers. And Jameis has the ability to drive the ball down the field. And he can push the ball down the field with a talented group of playmakers. And if you put all that together, the Saints are right there. They're probably competing with the Bucs. And I think the Bucs are just a better overall team. But the questions of, okay, Brady's 45 and some offensive line turnover and Gronk retiring, there are enough question marks with the Bucs that I think the Saints can be competing. The Saints play the Bucs in week 2. The Saints always beat the Bucs in the regular season. I think the hype is going to continue to grow in New Orleans, and it's going to be a matter of Jameis and his consistency. But I think a lot of pieces are in place for them to be competitive once again after taking a step back last year with all the injuries.
Okay, you've got great sources. What happened with Brady missing almost 2 weeks or 11 days, whatever it was? That was weird. I mean, it could have been someone sick in the family, but I felt like someone would uncover it. I may have missed it. What did you hear, Steve?
I think it wasn't anything that was crazy. It wasn't crazy enough that the Bucs were concerned, for whatever that's worth. They weren't concerned about it. So to me, it was probably something that had to do with, when he was retiring, they had stuff planned. And I think a lot of the rumblings about work-life balance and a lot of the stuff that many of us have to deal with, like, hey, honey, I'm not going to see you all day Sunday. I'm watching, 16 football games. I got to deal with that as a dad of 4. Like, sorry, I'm working. Tom Brady, even in his 40s, probably has to deal with that. Like, hey, I'm disappearing for the next few months. I got to go play football.
Okay,
really
hold on. Let me interrupt you, though. But I get all that, right? I mean, he's got young kids and a wife, but so do all these guys, really, because the average age is 26, although Brady's 45, like you said. But, I mean, he's maniacal. He doesn't miss 11 days of training camp because he would freak out. He would be losing a step in a league where everything's decided by a half an inch and another hour of game planning and film, and you've already dedicated 130 hours. Isn't this bizarre and weird? Consider I got 30 seconds. How maniacal he is, Steve?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I that's why I think it's his last year. And he's probably reprioritizing a little bit. He's going to give it one last run, and yeah, it could affect him a little bit. But it seemed like the Bucs weren't terribly concerned by the leave of absence.
Fair enough. Have a great weekend, my friend. We look forward to hanging out throughout football season. We appreciate you.
Can't wait. Thank you, guys.
Steve Palazzolo, NFL Insider, Pro Football Focus, PFF.com. He joined us on the Yuengling Lager guest line. Enjoy a Yuengling Lager when you throw some protein on the grill tonight to enjoy your Buffalo Bills and Los Angeles Rams. We're going to have NFL Chuck in studio. Chuck Mullins, attorney extraordinaire, Cleveland Browns fan. NFL Chuck will join us at 9:30 live in studio.